All right, thank you, Leanne. Welcome to Getting to the Center of Finger Walks. Here is our agenda today. We'll go through our introductions, then our objectives, our presentation of Getting to the Center of Finger Walks, the history and information about labyrinths, a mindfulness activity, an intro to finger labyrinths. It's easy for me to say. The Finger Walks user guide, and our wrap up. Okay, and just a few notes about Finger Walks. The price is $139. It is federal quota eligible. Can be shipped through Free Matter for the Blind, and there you see the APH catalog number as well. Our presenter today, Maia Scott. She's the author of Finger Walks. She's also faculty at the City College of San Francisco. Okay, our objectives. We're going to describe various types of labyrinths, identify 5 benefits of walking labyrinths, understand the ways labyrinths have appeared in world history on up through today, examine the implementation of finger labyrinths as an accessible avenue for participating in labyrinth experiences. We'll discover at least 5 simple prompts for getting a labyrinth walk started. We'll learn strategies for adding finger labyrinth walks into your curriculum or your program plans, or even your own personal practice. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Maia.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here today to share and explore all different types of things related to labyrinths. We're going to have a couple specific times that we'll be answering and open for questions. You're welcome to leave questions in chat at any point along the way. And we'll have a couple stopping points to explore answers. And I'll also have my email afterwards if you have further questions or want to geek out on labyrinth stuff beyond what we do today. So to start, I would love to first begin this session with an attitude of gratitude and thank all the people that made Finger Walks possible at APH. Thank my ancestors, my family, bring into this circle the Labyrinth Society at large and Veritas and all the wonderful people who've brought labyrinths into what they are today. And also, I would love to do a little audio description of myself for those who might need it. I identify as white, female. I'm chunky and have auburn hair. I'm wearing a kind of soft tie-dye top and labyrinth earrings. And behind me is my apartment with a lot of art on the wall and colorful things on the couch. And you might see an appearance of my guide dog at some point who may come by. So with that in mind, I'd like to start just with my story as a visually impaired person learning about labyrinths and how I ended up loving this whole walking in circles thing today. So, God, it was 15 years ago, maybe at least, I got to participate in a labyrinth experience at a center where I was working with adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities. It was beautiful. The music was low and soft, and the lights were ambient, and the labyrinth was a canvas, and I was amazed that someone was letting me walk around on this piece of art. But as I was walking, I would go to the center, go towards the center and step out of the way for people, and I kept on getting spit out the entrance, and it got very frustrating because it happened like 3 times. So I had me a little pity party stomping my way back in, and eventually got to the center, which was nice. And it was a couple weeks later that I realized that I was the lucky one. I got to walk around on that beautiful piece of art more than other people. I got to experience that journey in greater detail than other people. And I realized that that's an important lesson in my life as a woman who's visually impaired, who maybe takes a little longer to do things and may have to find my way in a different way. So I discovered that there was a lot to learn about this walking in circles thing and I should pursue it. So I became a certified labyrinth facilitator. But more about that kind of stuff later. So first and foremost, what is a labyrinth? And we'll get to seeing some images and exploring some images in a few minutes. But really, basically, it's not a maze. It's a unicursal path that usually winds its way to the center and then back out again. And there are no tricks, there are no dead ends, there's no real wrong way to walk one. And oftentimes we use them for contemplation because having our focus narrowed helps us kind of keep out the mind clutter or these other things that are coming at us from all different directions. So that's why a lot of times labyrinth paths are narrow, but they are meant to set you up for success, to get to that center, to find your way. And so also finger labyrinths. I have been collecting some finger labyrinths, so I'm just going to show you live a couple versions. Here's one that is 3D printed. This easy plastic. Probably could do these in your classroom from what's that? I forgot what that website's called. There's so many cool websites that you can go and get free sourced materials for 3D printing. Here's a little bowl that is made out of pewter, and just kind of exploring all the different possibilities that people have made them out of. It's so amazing. This one's really soft and sweet. It's also very tactile. A lot of the first finger labyrinths were initially created with accessibility and inclusion in mind, because a lot of labyrinths can't be tactily explored, the big walking ones. So here is a heart that a gentleman made with a laser cutter. This is his own pattern, own design. And I'll show you one more thing. And this is kind of a wood version, and it has a big groove. A lot of these finger labyrinths have a nice big groove that you can walk. And it's this kind that was originally made to invite someone who is visually impaired into a group labyrinth walk. So that's kind of a neat history. Oh wait, there's one more thing. There's finger walks. So we'll break that open a little bit later and look at the guidebook at the end. So let's get to exploring some of our content and go deeper into this process, look at a little history about labyrinths and where they come from and all those good things.
You ready for me to share?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Your opening slides up.
All right. So we are going to explore finger walks. As we know, we went through the first couple already. So let's move through to the next one. I think I put up the objectives. We have a goal and here we have our objectives. We already went through that.
Okay.
So let's move on past those. That's great. So finger labyrinths, I just showed you a few. So this is a great place to start. There's some advantages to finger labyrinths. They kind of level the playing field. You could pack them anywhere. They're easy to make. They're kind of fun to make. They're a bit cheaper to have around than building a giant one. There's a lot of variety. They tuck away really easily. And as you explored with me with my versions, a lot of them are tactile. And I love making them. And just this image here next to it is one that someone made in a workshop out of cotton balls on a tabletop, which this is an Ariadne's thread style. So you actually walk the cotton balls instead of between it. I thought that was fun. Let's see what's next. So what are labyrinths and where in the world do they come from? In this next few slides, we're going to explore some pages from finger walks along with some examples through history. So let's go see where the world takes us. So let's start in ancient times. I noticed as we created these collections of labyrinths, we had three kind of categories. We had ancient ones, ones from medieval, and ones from kind of modern times. So let's go see what's in the ancient lands. So one of the oldest variations of the labyrinth is a classical 7th circuit Excuse me. So the beautiful thing about this variation is its simplicity. That it has long sweeping strokes. If you were to cut this labyrinth in half across the middle, you'd have a rainbow with your 7 colors. And along the side is a petroglyph from around Morocco. And a lot of them were initially on pottery, cave walls, stones, crockery, even a coin from Knossos from Greece. So this goes back to like 2000 BC. So it's amazing how long lived they've been and how many cultures they cover. Let's see where we go next. Here is a labyrinth that the Romans put into a cathedral in Algeria when the church was dropping down from Italy into Africa. And it's interesting, they took the Minotaur out of the middle. A lot of, there's the whole story of Ariadne and the Minotaur from Greek mythology. So that coin from Knossos kind of celebrated that. So they put the church into the middle instead of the Minotaur. And I wanted to show you a Roman labyrinth because they're different than classical. This one's square, they're often mosaics. And if you were to walk this labyrinth, you'd visit one quadrant at a time instead of sweeping all the way around the middle. And let's go next. What's the next stop on our adventure?
That's okay. I have one question. There are
Yes.
2 graph designs on this, to the right and to the left. The one to the left looks like it's raised and has Braille on it.
Ah, yes, that on these this walkthrough history that we're doing, the images on the left are all images from finger walks, and the images on the right are going to be examples of the labyrinth that inspired the ones from finger walks. So this is, I believe, a rendition of the Al-Aslam labyrinth finger walk style on the left, and then we have a rendition from a website exploring the cathedral that it was in. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Beautiful. Okay, now we're going to drop down to Peru in South America and visit the Nazca Lines. We have a tiny piece of it in finger walks, a double spiral action going here, where you walk the lines. This is one of those unusual labyrinths that doesn't have a center. And this is also, I think, a really fun one because you could walk it two-handed. And when we initially put it in there, we thought, oh, you could walk it with a friend, but can't really do that physically distanced at this point. But the ones on the right are from history.com. They have, this thing just blows me away. It's so huge, you can see it from outer space, apparently. And it's comprised of all sorts of creatures and things along this giant earthwork that's dug into the ground. And I think we're gonna move on to medieval times now. And let's go to Chartres Cathedral in France. A lot of us Americans call it Chartres. No matter how I try to pronounce it French style, I get laughed at, so Chartres is what I call it. And this is a different turn for labyrinth, so to speak. We have the medieval style labyrinth now with lots of hairpin turns along the way. The Chartres Cathedral labyrinth is very noticeable from other medieval labyrinths because of the rosette in the center and the little spiky lunations all the way around the outside. We're talking about the 7-circuit classical one, and this one has 11 circuits, which means it goes around the middle 11 times. On the left is on the left is the finger walks version, and on the right is a candlelit walk at the cathedral, from modern times, from Veritas, one of the Veritas pilgrimages. And we're moving on to turf labyrinth called Shepherd's Race. Some say that's a whole series of different labyrinths of this sort. This one's the most well-known as Shepherd's Race. It also has lots of turns, like hairpin turns like the Chartres one, but it has a big spiral in the middle, and there's also some nested turns that have bigger sweeps outside of littler sweeps. And on the right is an example of a turf labyrinth. The Shepherd's Race doesn't exist anymore, and I don't believe there are any photographs. I'd love to see if there are. And we're moving on to Belgium. I put this one in here. I like this one because it's in a town hall, in a pacification room. And this labyrinth is a square one. It's medieval. It's actually a variant of another cathedral labyrinth in France. And it's rather asymmetrical and kind of wonky. And it's, I don't know, it's a little bit challenging to describe it properly. And I think that's why I like it. It just kind of puts me off kilter a little bit. And let's go to modern days. So here is the dancing woman on the left, again, the finger walks variation, and on the right, a finger labyrinth. I especially appreciate this modern representation of a Baltic labyrinth. Let's look at that for a second. Baltic labyrinths are one of those other variations. How I said we go to the center and back out on the same path. In this case, there's a second path. There's if you go under the left armpit, you get into the middle really fast. If you go under the right armpit, you wind your way around 4 times. This is a 4-circuit labyrinth. And Lisa Gidlow-Moriarty has walkable versions of, the canvas and whatnot, as well as these, tactile finger labyrinths. And selfishly, I had to put this in. This is my design. It's a spiral hand. On the left, the finger walks variation. And I just recently learned that this Chakra Vayu labyrinth, which is another labyrinth variation that has a spiral in the middle. It's kind of a classical with a spiral. It used to be, of course, not the hand version. That's a modern take on the Chakra Vayu. So it used to be a military formation, apparently. So I love that I appropriated it to use it for healing, a healing hand. On the right, I want to explain this a little bit. There is a giant layout of the hand labyrinth, and it's comprised of originally 800 copies of my own hand as a little hand labyrinth. And participants were invited to color and decorate their own hand and take one of my hands away and put their hand in it. So here's an example of using labyrinths for kind of participatory, interdisciplinary art experience. My vision for this was to show how each one of us makes a difference. So if we were to all put our hands in there and color, it would change the big picture. And finally, we're going to visit the London Underground, where there are 270 of these little enameled signs randomly stuck up in each station. And this is, I don't know what I'd call this one. It's kind of a meander labyrinth. And I was intrigued by these ones because the lines towards the center are much thicker than the lines along the outside. And yeah, so I just love these. I love the idea of going on a scavenger hunt for labyrinths someday. And let's go move on to, I want to throw in a little bit about labyrinth accessibility because it's becoming more and more of a matter that people are engaging in, and it's part of my desire to see finger walks come to fruition. Because as far as I know, there are very few accessible resources to the blind community about labyrinths. So let's go play in the world of accessible labyrinths. This is my tactile labyrinth. It's a rainbow 7-circuit classical labyrinth that can be walked eyes free. When I do workshops with this, I usually do a little bit of exploration of contact improv first, because you do run into each other. And this is not a tactile labyrinth. This is a 24-foot medieval kind of Chartres inspired pattern. And I put this in here just to show you that on flat labyrinths, you can go on a wheelchair because they're, you can just drive all the way across it. So the width of the lines doesn't matter as much. Some radius, chair radiuses are challenging on those tight turns, but just want to throw that in. And this one is a gem and the heart of my heart at the moment at Earl Baum Center for the Blind in Santa Rosa. And that's me with my former guide dog Fiddler on it. Guide dogs think this is a training test or trick or something because it's all curbs and they're meant to stop at curbs, but he did a good job. So this is a Baltic labyrinth that has bricks as the fields or the walls, with a peace pole to delineate the exit to the short way out. And it's also wide enough for people to go side by side, use walkers, make the turns in a wheelchair, etc. And I had to throw this one in because it was also walkable with a guide dog and could be chair friendly, though it is on grass. I love this one because it lights up at night. And this is a very special place in Indiana at Riley Children's Hospital. It's an overlook of the Children's Garden featuring a labyrinth that's not tactile. However, the thing that just brought me to tears is they have available little red wagons so families can take their loved ones, their children, out for a walk in the garden if they can't walk themselves. And Leanne, our wonderful Leanne from APH, just introduced me to this one with accessibility built into its original plan, with accessible paths as well as a delineation, strong delineation for the edges that can be found with cane. And looks like it would be pretty easy to walk with a guide dog. And that's at a university in Florida. Okay, we're going ancient times here, but it's kind of a modern thing to me. I had to throw this in. This is Lucca, Italy, where my grandfather's from. And I was able to walk this this labyrinth because it's tactile. So here's a tactile finger labyrinth from like the early 1200s. It's pretty cool. So we're going to stop for some questions, if anyone wants to field any questions. And then we are also going to do a little experiential labyrinth walk together.
Looks like so far all the questions have been answered already. Does anybody else have any questions they want to throw in the chat now?
Maia, I would say let us go on that adventure, and then after the adventure, you might get more.
Okay, I love it. Let's do that. So we're going to take an eyes-free finger labyrinth walk together right now. And if you noticed the last slide, that was a picture I took from Newgrange from Ireland, where a lot of spirals happened, and spirals along with labyrinths seem to cross a lot of cultures and a lot of time. So we're going to play with the spiral as the simplest labyrinth form out there at this point. And to start out, let's, I'm gonna invite you to get comfortable. See if you can sit up a little straighter in your chair, bring your shoulders up and back and drop them down so your heart is open Feel your feet planted into the floor and the crown of your head open to the sky. Feel like you're the trunk of a tree. And decide what kind of space you want to use in front of you. Maybe it's your desktop, perpendicular or parallel to the floor, or maybe it's the space between you and your screen, perpendicular to the floor. And let's take a couple deep breaths together. Deep breaths are important, remembering to breathe. And I will see if you can use a finger to gently enter that space on the edge, that space that you chose. And very slowly and gently draw a big spiral. You're gonna go from the outside in, working your way from the outside of the spiral into the center. Very slowly. And as you come around back to the start, see if you can imagine going right up to the edge of the circle that you made previously, feeling its soft, velvety edges along your finger, right up against the previous spiral, previous circle. And each time that circle's getting a little smaller, feeling the soft edges bumping up against your finger from the edge of the circle prior. Feeling your breath along the way. Feeling your finger make an impression in the space in front of you with the intention of finding a still point at the center. And the circles are getting smaller and smaller until you reach the center and you find a still point. And just hold at that still point for the moment. Feel the energy in your finger. And then let's slowly work your way back out again. Little tiny circles around that still point that you created. Gently working your way around above, to the side, and below that still point. Feeling those soft, silky edges of the circle you made prior. Getting bigger. Taking it slow. Noticing if you have any rhythm to your breath that goes with specific places that you reach in your circle. And that spiral is getting bigger. You're way far away from that center point now. Until eventually you come back to rest your finger at that point that you chose at the beginning to start your journey. And you have just gone on an eyes-free labyrinth adventure that you can do anywhere. And I also teach a lot of movement and stuff. So another fun thing to do with this one, say you have someone who can't hold their arm up for that long, because that's a long time to move your arm. You can do it with your nose. You can do it with your toe. You can have a pencil. Imagine you have a pencil of energy at the top of your head and do it in circles in your chair. So there's a lot of ways to play with kind of bringing new dimension to this one little labyrinth spiral exercise. So thank you for going on a spiral adventure with me.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the difference between a labyrinth and a maze?
Beautiful. Let's visit that one. A labyrinth has no dead ends and no tricks, and a maze has dead ends. It has places that you have to turn around and go back. And Lauren Artrist put it the most beautifully that I've heard it so far. A labyrinth intends for you to find your way, and a maze intends for you to lose your way. I just love that description. Both are fun and important. I think it's good to lose your way and have to discover your sense of patience and directionality and whatnot. But for our purposes today, for the sake of something that's kind of low risk and high reward and meditative and safe, we're going to stick with labyrinths.
So we can see the relaxation and that meditation. What are the other benefits of walking labyrinths?
Wow, there is, thank you for bringing that up, because I don't think I made a slide on that, and that's so important. There is a great right brain, left brain duality that goes for you. There's a lot of rehabilitative benefits. For example, walking one in person, it kind of plays with people's equilibrium. It makes people have to make turns. There's a lot of physical discovery and strengthening that can happen. Same with the finger labyrinths. It will help you follow direction, trust your body and your intuition. God, there's so many good things that can happen from a labyrinth. It's also a beautiful creative constraint. While you're staying inside these lines, you're invited to open and to let go of everything so that you can have greater creative potential and get rid of blocks.
Well, very cool.
I have one more question too.
Go for it.
The difference between labyrinth and spinning.
I am unfamiliar with spinning, so I don't know that I could answer that question. Is there someone else in chat that can
I wonder
address
if they're
that?
talking about a mannerism in which a student might stimulate themselves.
Oh, very good point. We did talk briefly on the site about labyrinths and fidget toys and stuff like that. And there is something that can be very stimulating about a labyrinth, and maybe it could be, I've not seen any research on this, but maybe it could be a tool to address self-stimming or fidgeting and whatnot, because it is a physical activity that has a lot of repetition involved with it. But it leads you to an end, it leads you to a goal and back out again. So it's not something that's fully consistent, and it has a potential time limit, has constraints. So I hope that generates some inspiration or some thoughts related to spinning. In fact, there is an instructor who created some plastic tactile finger labyrinths that she called Time in Labyrinths, which were she gave to students who had ADHD and who were very fidgety, and it helped them kind of focus. It gave them something to fidget with, and then again, that kind of constraint that helped them narrow their focus at the same time.
This might be a great opportunity just to take a pause also from our audience and launch a poll. And we've launched a poll here that goes along with, have you ever walked a labyrinth? And that goes well with so many of the graphics, the images that you shared early on, that you can walk them before we started talking about the finger ones. And so far we have just about 50-50. It's going back and forth. Yes, about 51, 52%. No, 50-50. So we'll give another moment and then I'll stop it because it's still coming in, and it looks like we have stopped. And I'm going to share results. So have you ever walked a labyrinth? 53% said yes, and 47% said no. So this was really interesting to see. I know that in our practice session, we at APH were talking about labyrinths that might be across the United States and states that we live in. So this shows that we've had a lot of experience. Thank you.
And if you want to walk a labyrinth, there's a labyrinth locator that I have a link for at the end with some resources. So you can type in your state or your neighborhood or your zip code and find labyrinths near you.
I see two more questions before I let you go on. Can walking labyrinths help a person who is blind and experiencing balance problems due to their vision loss?
Yes. I noticed that in my tactile labyrinth experiences with the blind community, there was some concern about balance because of the ropey edges. So I actually invited people, if they wanted to bring their cane on, they could. I think that the right and left turns can certainly help with equilibrium and footing and balance, definitely. Along with, I don't know that it's going to happen at this moment in time, but back in the, in times to come when you're walking with other people, it really makes a difference in exploring spatial awareness and understanding where other people are.
And do you know if there are different benefits between labyrinths that were all curved and then those that were angular?
Oh, that's a fun question. The more angular ones are going to give you more turns and more challenges. So, if you have, say, like a Roman one with all the, what do you call it? The hairpin turns along with the corners. If you think about versus a circle one, you have probably at least 2 times more opportunities to make a turn. So definitely you're going to get more bang for your buck with the square one or with the angular one. We even have a star one that's not shown today in finger walks where you really get lots of turns.
Okay, I'm going to go back to your incorporating labyrinths into your programming.
Wonderful. Okay. So let's go see what we can do. So there's a lot of reasons to walk a labyrinth. That's one of the fun things too. It's not always, okay, take a deep breath. Now it's time to relax. There's a lot of good reasons to play with, walk, explore, create with labyrinths. So I have here some prompts, just kind of like what we did today, starting with some breaths and using it as a time to breathe and find yourself into, in a gentle space. Some people call the labyrinth a sacred space. It can be a gentle space, a peaceful place. Let's go on a peaceful journey. I love that idea. If any of you guys have experienced guided imagery meditation, this could be that windy road through the woods or along the river that you're exploring in this beautiful landscape that you're visioning for yourself. You'd ask a question, kind of like cleaning out a desk drawer. You have space for new stuff, right? So you can go, I don't know what to do about this particular situation at work. Let me just kind of empty myself for a minute. I'll leave this question at the door and come back to it. And sometimes it can help, having that free space to work around that question can be useful. Think about someone important to you. It's a great way to celebrate. I've seen labyrinth walks to celebrate special events. Maybe you're working with women's history and like, who's a powerful woman? Walk in celebration in honor of her and find your power, whether you're woman or man or fluid or however you identify. What's your power and how do you celebrate that person in yourself? Walk in gratitude. I love doing a labyrinth walk, especially a medieval one, where you think of something you're grateful for with every turn. Or if you want to keep it simple, say I'm grateful for blah, and I walk for that thing. I'm grateful for APH creating finger walks, and I'm going to walk in honor of them. Remembering, I retired a couple of guide dogs on my on labyrinths, and sometimes it's important to remember people, and grieving's okay. and taking a moment out to say, oh, this moment's for me to remember you. Leave all your heavy things behind. I had a friend one time who said that it's important to have 2 pairs of shoes. You have one for work and one for home, and the ones for work stay outside the home, and the ones for home stay outside the work. So this is a chance to take off your heavy things shoes before you go into that labyrinth. And a lot of people walk labyrinths without their shoes on because you feel the earth more. So you take off your heavy things shoes for all the things that are bothering you, and you let them go. They'll be there when you come back out, and you just go inside the labyrinth without those things, and let yourself be free and light and unhindered. You can explore your goals or your dreams. What do you want to attain to, and how am I going to get there? And this path is kind of maybe what it's going to be like. It feels like I'm going right to the center and I'm going to get it, but there's a lot of work to do before I get there. And that's okay, because that's what life does sometimes. And removing doubt. You know, let's, this is a low risk, high reward. I'm going to get to the center of this labyrinth, and I can, and I will. So just a moment of self-empowerment. Let's do this thing because I can, and it feels good. And then I can go struggle with the other stuff. So let's see what other kind of things we can do with labyrinths. Labyrinths in your lessons. This is kind of fun stuff. I'm a big fan of multiple intelligences and kind of integral teaching tools. I started school in Montessori, so anything that I can do. I'm a very kinesthetic, social, interactive person. Even though I'm an introvert, when I'm learning, I love to be with other people and do things. So the first 3 kind of explore story, shaping a story. A lot of labyrinths with the middle have a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a story. Fancy that. So you play with story structure. And the hero's journey, again, we talked about that winding path that looks like it's going to go to the middle right away, and it doesn't. And there's all these twists and turns on this person's journey. Maybe you're the hero, maybe it's someone that you're reading about, and how does that work into the to the book you're studying? And with each turn, and then what happened, and then what happened, and then what did they encounter, and how did they get past that? And Ariadne and the Minotaur is a very popular discussion around labyrinth, though that's a whole different debate on what kind of labyrinth that was involved. But the point is, the thread got the person out, and so it's kind of fun to explore the labyrinth with that mythology. And there's a lot on the web about Ariadne's thread and the current labyrinth movement. Let's go into mapping and just thinking about skills for those of us who are blind or visually impaired. I started liking maps a little bit better when I started walking labyrinths and felt more like I could understand and feel in control of the space. Again, it's low risk, high reward. You can find your way to the destination without making wrong turns or getting stuck. It's a great way to build confidence, I think, for learning routes or finding something in a room. What if it was all a labyrinth? And this is important, listening and following directions, not just from other people, but from your own body. I've seen a lot of people on my tactile labyrinth, especially sighted people, and their legs are turning them one way because their feet are feeling the rope, and their upper body, their head is saying, I'm supposed to go this way. So their feet are turned to the left and their heads turned to the right. And it's just really funny to watch them try to figure this out. So listening and following directions and being patient so that you can. If you try to rush, you might just jump over a wall and then you're stuck. Tracking and sensory exploration, thinking about people who might be learning to read Braille or even use a video magnifier. How do you physically and tactily keep on track and keep online? Same with following tactile graphics. Then confidence with your place in space. I've grown up loving dance, and I think that helped a lot, but I think labyrinths can also build confidence in knowing where you are, especially when you repeat it. It's basically choreography for your finger or your feet. And you can even play, you know, with math skills with this. How many times do you jump over the wall to get to the center? If you do it 3 times over and back, we got your multiplication there. Or how many turns are there? And how many turns are there if you go in and out of the Chartres Cathedral Labyrinth? And my favorite, because I love creative stuff, is what does this remind you? It's a bunch of circles, but what else could it be? It's a target, it's a toilet seat, it's a record, an old vinyl record, it's the orbit of planets. So kind of just playing with imagination, looking at labyrinths. I think there's some more sensory exploration on our next page. I work with a lot of arts and whatnot, so I had to throw some of this stuff in here. It's kind of fun to submerge a tactile labyrinth, like the finger walks labyrinths, in water. I have not explored this long term, so I don't know how long the ink will last if you keep submerging them in water. So, you know, do at your own risk, but the bumps will still be there. And especially warm water, it's really nice for people who might have arthritis, and also just is very soothing having the heat. You can cover it in sand or flour or something, so you have to kind of dig in there and kind of treasure hunt to find the path. It's something kind of, my imagination goes lots of fun places in my kid mind when I do that. Beads or pebbles or shells or little bits of stuff can be methodically put into the path along the way to the center to create a beautiful mosaic, and you can dump them out and go back. Nice little fine motor exploration with that one. And I think they're really fun to make texture rubbings with. If you get crayons on their side and put paper over them and rub, it makes really neat impressions of the labyrinths. And if you do multiples, they end up making these kind of cool moire, kind of kaleidoscopic patterns. You can also use them for monoprint or for stamp making, for print making. And if you roll paint onto a flat surface and lay the labyrinth on there and press it on paper, you can make lots of labyrinths. They're not going to be tactile, but they'll be pretty. And you can also flip them upside down and press them into mud or clay and create the reverse and kind of walk those. And you can even try to duplicate the labyrinths with found objects. And that could be a whole new session or webinar on how to make labyrinths. There's some seed patterns that are kind of fun. Or, you know, why not use the labyrinth as a starting point, and like, where does your labyrinth take you? Create your own. So a lot of fun things to do with labyrinths.
This is a great place, Amy, to launch another poll.
Absolutely. Here we go. This goes along so well with what you were talking about. Which mindfulness activities are you using with your students? There's labyrinth, meditation, yoga, tai chi, breath work, sound healing, sensory massage. And if there's something that we don't have listed, put it in the chat for us so that we know. In the chat, one of the links that we put in there was a really interesting resource that came out of Paths to Literacy that was mindfulness curriculum being used right now out in California. So we put that link in. It just fits so well. So results are coming in. I'm going to go ahead and end it so that we can look at it. And I'm going to share the results. And it says breath work at 71% is the one that people chose the most. We had 4 people who said labyrinths, 20 who reported meditation, 20 participants that said yoga, 3 people that said tai chi, sound healing were 4 people, and then sensory massage was 6. So that is really great to know. Thank you.
And is this also a good time to throw out a question for the chat? I offered some seeds of ideas and things that I think are great to do with labyrinths, and I would love to, I love improv, I love yes and moments. So we have this great group of thinkers and teachers and creators here, and I would love to hear and share ideas about what you might do with labyrinths in your work. How would you use them? What kind of prompts or exercises would you do with them? And we can
while those
share.
are coming in, I'm going to let you do your last few slides because we're going to run out of time.
Oh, okay. So we're going into resources here, and there are lots of amazing books about labyrinths out in the world, and I just picked 3. There's something for everybody. Jeff Sayward's Labyrinths and Mazes is your place to geek out on everything labyrinth history and whatnot. Helen Curry's book, the blue one in the middle, which incidentally has a little raised labyrinth on it, yay, explores more about the how to use them. It's a gentle little book with lots of beautiful images in it. And then on the left, Jim Buchanan's Labyrinth book explores some of the history and stuff like that, but he really goes into a lot about the making of labyrinths. And then I wanted to throw in a slide about books that focus on labyrinths in schools, because I believe that's a lot of who we are here today. And the Kids on the Path is by Marge McCarthy, and she's been at it for years in New Mexico. 108 ways to use labyrinths in schools is just a little pamphlet style book that's chock full of things to do with labyrinths. And the one on the left is kind of geared more towards kids and helping them find good things to do with labyrinths and get support for that. And finally, I want to read off some resources in case these are hard to get from transcripts and stuff. All of these resources are great for finding lots of other resources. So if you want to dig into anything to do with labyrinths and just lose yourself in the on the internet about everything labyrinth, you can check out discoverlabyrinths.com, spelled exactly like it sounds. There's also labyrinthenterprises.com, spelled exactly like it sounds. And Labyrinthos, and that's LABYRINTHOS. So it's labyrinth with an OS at the end, .net. You'll find a lot of history stuff on there. And labyrinthsociety.org is going to have a lot of resources about different types of labyrinths, as well as a community to join if you're interested in labyrinths. And then lastinglabyrinths.com, spelled exactly like it sounds, I had to put in there too, because she has a lot of great resources for labyrinths in schools and whatnot, and a lot of handouts and a coloring book and whatnot. She works with labyrinths in Montessori. And then finally, veriditas.org has great resources, and they are the certifying kind of agency that I got trained with. And I think that pretty much does it for the resources. And this is our stopping point. The journey is the reward. And I think that's the big thing that I learned from that first walk that brought me here now. And I would love to find out if there were any other brainstorms or ideas that people might have found in chat.
You had lots of them. We have, as a break or a reward for an O&M adventure, for summer camp, problem solving with orientation, comparing and contrasting labyrinths, as a mindfulness and orientation and sensory awareness. Very helpful for students who need breaks during other activities. Another person said, make sure those with sight try closing their eyes with a finger labyrinth that's tactile. It's a very different experience.
Mm-hmm.
A speech therapist indicated this would be helpful for sparking a conversation. So there you go. Lots.
I think
and
right
lots
here
of
we have
ideas.
another 108 ways to use a labyrinth in schools. You guys just wrote your own book here. You guys are brilliant. Let's hear it for the collective consciousness. You guys are brilliant.
Well, definitely, definitely. Well, we are right out of time, and this was a wonderful experience. Thank you so much for taking us on a mindfulness walk in space with our fingers, as well as all of the wonderful, rich information about labyrinths and how we can utilize them with our students.
Well, thank you for having me. Please feel free to email me if you have further questions. I neglected to read that on the resources. It's mscott@ccsf.edu, and it's also in the description, so you can find it in the description of this webinar. Peace to each of you. Be safe, be well, and thank you for coming together today.